Welcome to Impact Champions, an L&D podcast where we talk about the impact that training can have. My name's Andy. I'm the Managing Director of ClearXP. I have 20 years experience working in organisations, working on organisational learning and development. I'm joined today by David. Hi, David.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Tell us a little about yourself.
I'm CTO / co-founder of ClearXP. I have some amount of years of technical experience, so let's see if I can jump in where I can.
Not as old as me, so not 20 yet. We're joined today by Mark. Hello, Mark.
Good to be here.
And Mark is a technical expert specifically on AI. Would you mind giving us a little bit of a background about yourself?
Absolutely. I'm a senior engineer at ClearXP, hold a master's in data science, and I've been tinkering with AI for quite a long time now.
Very good. So we brought a data scientist into this conversation today because we are going to be talking about AI. AI has made a huge impact on the society as we know it at the moment, and it's having a very big impact on learning and development. So we want to just talk about a few things that we're hearing about, and we want to sort of dissect a little bit about the technology so people out there can just understand what this is and what's happening and what's going to be happening in the future. So my first question today, Mark, is what is AI?
What is AI?
What is AI? What counts as AI today? What is this thing that people are talking about?
It's a great question. I think it's pretty hotly debated what artificial intelligence actually means. I can't give you a textbook definition, but I'll give you my own definition, and coming from a technical background. But I think in computing, artificial intelligence really means that you're getting the computer to do something without explicitly telling it what to do.
Cool. Okay. Dave, do you have anything to add to that?
I don't know if I have too much to add, but I'd like to learn a bit more about that. What do you mean getting it to do something for you? Can you be a bit more specific?
Yeah, let me give you an example. So think of the game of chess. There's been lots of investment in time on building AI agents in the game. You might be familiar with Garry Kasparov and Deep Blue. So what I wouldn't consider artificial intelligence is if I was to tell my chess playing robot, first move all your pawns, then move all your bishops, then move all your knights, and so on. That I wouldn't consider AI. But if I was to instead give my agent some rules, so hey, when you are up in material, why don't you go ahead and try and attack the other chess playing robot? Okay. When you're behind, why don't you try and defend your position? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Now, Deep Blue is 30 to 40 years ago. Is AI today much the same as it was back then?
Not quite. It's gotten significantly better. There's been a whole bunch of evolution happening in the space. So just for reference, Deep Blue was playing according to rules that were defined by its developers. And we've come a long way since then.
Okay.
Primitive.
So from my understanding then, you're saying that AI can load it up with a strategy as to what it's supposed to be doing?
Yeah, more or less.
As opposed to direct instructions. Yeah. An AI element would be giving it rules and bound areas to play within the strategy, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool. All right. So then, along with AI, which is the main buzzword we hear, and like you said, you described what that definition would be. What about other things like ML, machine learning, was something we heard a lot a while ago. It isn't as around as much. We don't hear it as much anymore.
No, big buzzword, 5 or so years ago. So machine learning is kind of an extension of like a rule-based artificial intelligence, but at the same time, you're also getting the AI to determine what its rules should be. And the way you can think about that, and data scientists don't come after me because this is a very simplified version of what's happening, but if you think of just like a plain old math equation from high school, if you stack a whole bunch of those equations together, you can start to model really complicated problems. And when we talk about training a machine learning model, what we're really doing is taking examples of what we want to happen, and maybe some counterexamples, what we don't want to happen, and giving those to the AI. And it will tweak its equations, and it will fit those equations to give us the results that we actually want to see.
Right.
From my understanding with machine learning, part of it is that there's just like far too many variables for a human to actually be able to build those formulas or equations themselves. Is that kind of, that's where the machine learning basis is from?
Yeah, I would say so. And often the AI developers will talk about machine learning models being a black box. It's because there are just so many things happening that it's really complicated to try and understand as a human, like what these rules actually mean.
Yeah. And forgive me if I get this wrong, but machine learning is also coming from that era of like just needing a ton of training data, examples of good and bad, and then you run the machine learning model against it, and that's how you get the output of some inferred behavior. Is that right?
Yeah, that is more or less true. And I think a natural repercussion of that is that it's very time consuming to build each of these very specific models to do the defined behavior that you're after.
Do we still need to do that these days? Are those days gone?
I think there's definitely still a place for those kinds of models, but you may have heard of large language models, the hot new thing on the block. They have made it a lot easier to get started and a lot easier to do a whole range of various tasks.
Okay. I did understand most of that, but some of it I didn't. So for the layperson like myself, AI, and what's the difference between AI and ML? Is there a difference, or is it?
Yeah, so, well, I would say that AI in general, you're giving a model or a robot, whatever you want to call it, rules to follow.
Yeah.
When you do machine learning, you get the AI agent to teach itself the rules that it needs to follow.
Okay. Cool. All right. Then you mentioned something in that last conversation too, which I certainly understood when I heard it, because we're hearing a lot about it lately. LLM, large language model. I even know what it means. Well, I know what the term means.
You know what it stands for?
I know what it stands for. I can kind of know, I've seen it in action. So, and GPT. So, what's the relationship there? What's happening now with LLMs becoming so prevalent?
Large language models are a form of machine learning, and they're based on the transformer architecture. So right. GPT means generative pre-trained transformer. Right. And really what they are is they are just gigantic machine learning models. So okay. You may or may not have heard, but often like the number of equations that are in these models are in the order of millions. So 7 million, 14 million or more, 300 million.
13 million equations.
Actually, I think I'm wrong. I think it's billion, isn't it?
Yeah, billions.
Billions.
Billions of equations. So just...
Billions of equations, yeah.
Oh my God, it sounds like a nightmare for me.
Yeah. So there's a few, I guess, repercussions from that. Is one that they're extraordinarily hard to train. You need a lot of hardware, which is very expensive.
A lot about that.
But on the flip side is that once these things are trained, well, basically anyone can run them.
When you say training an LLM, what do you mean by that?
Okay. Stop me if this is too technical.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about transformers briefly.
Yep.
So I think the original purpose of the transformer was to take natural language in, say, English and transform it into, say, French.
Yep.
So it's for translating. At some point, some very clever people decided that, well, what if we got it to generate this other half of a conversation? So really what we're giving it is we're giving it the input text. So back to the translation, we'll give it a sentence in English, and then we'll give it the pair sentence in French.
Yeah.
And that's how we train it. We say, this is what we want you to do. Try and output this sentence. And then...
it does its thing. And then the machine learning part all happens. It generates its equations, and probabilistically it gets it correct. Yeah.
So through more math, it updates its internal equations to get closer and closer to outputting what we wanted to see.
Okay. Like I say, most of us will be able to relate to using ChatGPT. Pretty much everybody's been using it, or Copilot, or some kind of organisations have multiple different ways of doing that. So when I'm using ChatGPT and I'm saying, for my example would be, I write in a very bad grammatically poor sentence.
Well demonstrated.
Thank you. Then it spits it out with perfect grammar. So it's transforming my poorly worded sentence into something that is, it's been trained on what is, under these circumstances, what is grammatically correct, and it transforms it. Essentially what fundamental is, because it knows, because of all these equations. Is that correct?
Yeah, so it gives you the most likely outcome for the input that you've given it. So if you tell it, hey, what I want you to do is I want you to take my sentence and make it nice and readable, those equations will arrange themselves, say, in a way that gives you, the nice clean sentence that you were after.
Yeah.
I think what's interesting here is that, like, you don't need to train the large language models on all those specific use cases. This is why they're generalized. It's been fed so much data, like the internet's worth of data and literature, that it has emergent behaviors where it can somewhat understand what your request is and do the right thing without having to be told, here's how you correct grammar, here's how you translate this, here's how you do X, Y, Z. They've kind of gotten around the way of having to train it for every single use case.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, that's really interesting. The fact that the T part of it stood for transformer for me was something that I learned recently, and I was like, wow, okay, actually makes sense. So, and I think previously when you talked about it to me, Mark, you've mentioned that it's like a parrot. It will only give back to you what it's learned. It's not going to sort of bring any original or anything new in there. There's a few myths and things we're hearing about AI that I would like to run past you, and you can tell me if it's correct or not. People are concerned that the machines will take their jobs. That's a very broad statement. Some people might be more at risk than others, but is it possible that machines are going to be able to do everything at some point?
I don't think, if that is the case, that will happen anytime soon. But this is something that I've spoken to you about, Dave, and you have some good insight on this.
Yeah, I think the fear, if we're talking about large language models specifically, taking people's jobs, I think the viewpoint right now across the industry is that it's more of a productivity tool to enhance jobs. So you might be able to do more with less. Yeah. And the optimistic view is that by being able to be more productive, you don't need to deprecate staff. You can just get a lot more done in a shorter time frame. And that's kind of the goal right now as we see it. Having said that, almost certainly some jobs will be lost. I think that just happens with any massive technical innovation. Yep. And interesting, it is probably mostly knowledge workers who maybe are not performing those valuable tasks. They may be just operating as some middlemen. But yeah, right now it's very hard to determine.
I heard something along the lines of that maybe isn't costing people their job at the moment, but it potentially is costing somebody new trying to get into an organisation. It's like there's potentially organisations are hiring less grads or less juniors because those roles can be taken by somebody who's being more efficient in their job because of this technology.
Well, the interesting thing is that younger people are more on board with using AI. So you can actually have graduates coming in who are using AI effectively and doing a much better at their role than people who have been there years and aren't leveraging AI. So it can cut both ways.
Well, it's interesting. I don't think there is a definitive trend yet. Well, I haven't heard of a definitive trend yet as to what's happening with people's job. But I guess the technology doesn't sound like, at the moment anyway, that it has the ability to think like how humans think and use thought and come up with ideas. It does create an even more even playing field. People can offload their cognitive load, is something that people have been talking about. So you don't have to carry around as much with you. But what you still have to be able to do is use your understanding and knowledge and experience in order to be able to perform your roles and perform tasks. It doesn't seem like that's going to be able to do that anytime soon. Okay, so another myth Well, I don't know if it's a myth. This is something more that I am interested in because we talked about performing people's roles, but then empathy is something that I like to talk about in learning, but I always sort of looked at it as being something a human has because they can relate to a person and circumstances and understand potentially things like their feelings and their things that they have that are very human traits. But I'm hearing more and more that empathy is something that actually may be possible using AI. Thoughts?
Not right now.
You haven't got thoughts right now, or empathy can't do that? It can't do empathy.
I don't
right
think
now.
we're quite at that stage, but I
Yeah.
mean, if you think back to when we were talking about transformers, these models are trained to give you the most likely outcome to what you've given it. So they can be very, very convincing in that it may feel like they really understand your human situation, but yeah, the architecture of these models is such that that's not something they can do.
It's more just like statistically, its output aligns with something that would be demonstrating empathy without it actually having that level of understanding.
Yeah.
Which probably brings us to some of these next questions in terms of some of the concerns and worries that people have with this. Ethics being the first one that people are often worried about. Ethically, is this something that as a society we're just going to need to get past that we're concerned about, or are the concerns around the use of AI real?
This is a really tricky one. I don't want to go too deep into it, but I do feel like technology has a way of outpacing legislation. So things like just taking people's content online and training on it, like that's probably just collateral in the evolution of this technology. Dave, do you have thoughts?
Oh, I mean, there's so many considerations, right? It's the source training data and copyright material. There's the environmental impacts. There's the output and whether it has biases and can show prejudice. So I think all of those things, like just like any new technology, like they need to be taken into account, and we need to put mitigative factors in where possible. And with organizations that I work with right now, like they have pretty tight AI governance frameworks where they're trying to mitigate things like biases, and they want to increase transparency with how models operate. So they're doing, like, things are moving in the right direction, even if it's not at like a government legislative level. Organizations and their use of AI, they're very mindful of that. I've definitely seen AI governance checks where they won't use AI applications if it's going to deprecate jobs, as we we're talking about before. So, or if there's any potential negative social impacts. So I think organizations are doing the right thing. That says nothing of the source training materials, unfortunately, or the environmental impacts, which are real.
Yeah. There's lots of experimentation about, or it seems like there's experimentation for people using GPTs. One of the recent ones I heard, there's a few of them about GPT or ChatGPT taking people off in all kinds of weird directions. One of them being organisations using it for counselling, and it's like, seems like earlier our conversation about empathy feels like, I don't know. Personally, I don't know if that should be the best use of. I don't know if it should be providing counselling when it doesn't actually have that human side to it. If it's based upon everything it's learned before and strategy and guidelines, but humans are so weird, and if someone's experiencing problems, it feels like that should be something another human always tackles. We don't have to go too deep into that. But that's just some of the examples I've heard recently of these things being used in ways I'm like, oh, I'm not sure about that.
I don't have a lot to add there, but I do think that if it's going to help some people, then I guess that makes sense. If it's doing more good than harm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting one, right? Because like you imagine that someone's asking a question like which touches on mental health. It's AI doesn't have the expertise to know how to respond effectively. But I heard an interesting thing from the head of product from OpenAI recently, where they said that the safe thing for them to do is to just put guardrails and say, no, we're not going to respond to these touchy subjects.
Yep.
But they're intentionally not doing that. They're trying to make it safe and be able to provide that assistance because like mental health advice is something that's not reachable to everybody. So it's easy for us to say, oh yeah, we can go get a counselor, we've got all these resources, but that's just not the case for like the wider population. So
It's also true, yeah.
they think they can do greater good by being able to tackle those questions as long as they can do it safely.
Okay.
Yeah, wow.
Okay. Excellent example. Okay, let's go into a slightly different area, something that we spend a lot of time in talking about training and education. So we talked about it before. AI is a bit of an equaliser. It is providing a way for people to ease their cognitive load. It stores a lot of information that people don't necessarily need to carry around with them anymore. That is a little bit of what traditional education is about. So is it that we are just as educators as a whole need to adjust the way we go about delivering and facilitating training?
David?
You don't have any comments on that?
They're brewing.
Okay.
I'll let you go first.
I'll give you a moment.
Give me your thoughts
Give me a
first,
moment.
David, and then we'll hear from Mark.
The question was whether educators need to start doing things differently, knowing that students might be leveraging AI for...
Well, it's very obvious that they definitely are.
Okay.
most certainly universities, workplaces, it's very obvious people have got access. Unless they're just flat out restricting it through their firewall or something, so they can't get access to it.
Yeah.
Some schools do that. But if it's available, people will use it. So I suppose there's a couple of options, right? You can flat out resist and just say, when you're starting off with if you use a university course, for example, you must not use AI in any of your assignments.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but with that comes the requirement for technology to be able to say, we'll know if you do or not. A facilitator can't be relied on to say that unless they're looking out for M dashes and emojis, which is like, if you're any good at it, you know not to do that.
Yeah.
So I was like, you can try and restrict it flat out, which I don't think is going to work.
Yeah.
Or you can probably be somewhere in the middle where you're kind of accepting it and suggesting ways that you should or shouldn't do it. Or you can just flat out say, we're using it, and here's how we deliver our training or curriculum with the understanding that AI is being used.
Yeah. Yeah. I think like a lot of educators are doing it differently, or like they're coming up with their own rules because there isn't an answer to this just yet. My view is that I think you need to accept AI as a tool that we can use. I understand the concern that you can just get AI to do your whole assignment for you is real, and you're not going to learn that way. So my view is like using AI as like a research assistant to help you learn is extremely valuable. Mm-hmm. And then maybe like you draw the line at being able to write something in your own words. I don't know how you enforce that. I'm not sure. I've seen some things, some lecturers, professors will now, when they give an assignment, they'll sneak in prompt injection techniques. So they'll say, when you write this assignment, make sure you mention bananas. So that way AI, if the students literally
nice blurb about bananas.
literally, if they're just feeding it to an AI prompt, it's going to mention bananas, and they go, okay, well, yeah, you've clearly used AI there because you haven't read it. So there's sneaky tactics like that. That's probably not going to work forever.
There's a suggestion for somebody out there to trip over their students.
Yeah. But I think it's definitely something that needs to be solved. I think we need to allow AI in some forms and then just find out where that line should be.
Yeah. Maybe from a technical perspective, Mark, what technology is available to potentially detect cheating or things like that?
Yeah, so there are some businesses that specialize in detecting things that have been generated by AI. Can I give my technical tidbit?
Yeah, please do.
So there's a architecture called generative adversarial networks. And what that really means is there's two models, one that generates an output and one that tries to tell if that was written by an AI or a human, basically.
Right.
Anyway, I'll give you a bit of lived experience because I was finishing my master's degree when ChatGPT kind of broke onto the scene. When I was finishing my master's, there was kind of a big push to lock it down, not let anyone use these technologies. You were heavily invigilated with software when you were doing assignments or exams rather. But I think I agree with Dave. I think we're at a point where it's an inevitability. You kind of need to let it happen. Much like when the calculator came onto the scene, it's just another tool that you can use.
Yeah.
And I think net result, my hunch is that a lot of things will move back to in-person, which I do really love. So,
Yeah. Well, I'll give you an interesting tidbit as well. Talking about this with uni lecturers recently, and they were saying that the most common way of cheating is by someone taking the answers with them into an in-person exam anyway. So the old answers on hand type thing. So, that doesn't have anything to do with AI. That's people cheat. People are cheating. People are going to find a way to cheat.
absolutely.
Like you said, the calculator example is a really good one. It's something that's new and it's a tool. The reality is, if everyone's got it, you're not getting any advantage from using it. It's your ability to be able to show what you're able to do with it is the thing that gives you difference to others.
Yeah, that's very true.
So, yeah, I think so too. All right. In the last few minutes, we might look forward into the future and look at this technology and say, well, we're currently in the world of OpenAI and GPTs, which everything's being transformed into formats that we can use, and everyone's feeling smart because they've got their grammar corrected or whatever it is they might be using it for. Where could this be heading? What's possible, say, in a few years' time? And then what's possible longer term?
Look, if I knew the answer to that, I'd probably be a very rich man.
Your next roadmap is...
Yeah. I mean, the technology is moving so fast, right?
That's right.
It's very hard to tell where the foundation models are going to go and what the capabilities are going to be. OpenAI and Google, they're all aiming for artificial general intelligence or superintelligence. We don't know when that's going to come. So I think in the shorter term, like the shorter term being 2 to 3 years, the interesting future is going to be applications of AI.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think, ChatGPT and the chat model is so prevalent now. I don't think that's the ultimate application. I think that's just the most obvious first one.
Yeah.
And so the future is going to be just experimenting with different ways of using this and building it into workflows seamlessly, low friction ways to increase productivity or achieve things that we couldn't achieve before. And I think that's going to be the interesting future.
Okay. Like one of the ones I think about is now when I don't know if they've actually done it yet, but there's excitement about there being the first fully AI generated movie.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know. That doesn't seem all that great.
Fully generated like script and acting and editing. Like,
Yeah.
what do you mean by fully?
Well, I don't know.
Okay.
I haven't seen it. I don't know. I probably won't see it, but that's what is happening, and we've seen AI generated images kind of go from being something that is quite a bit cringy and lame, and it's like people have got 6 fingers and all those kinds of things. So now they're being produced really quite accurately and getting better all the time. So surely we'll get to a point where it's just like, well, it can go only so far. You get to hyper real, and that's it.
Yeah, but I think the thing with that, especially like entertainment, is like humans crave a human connection.
Exactly.
And look, if you can AI generate a movie, that's just going to increase volume, and it's not necessarily going to be higher quality. And that, here's another example, right? We can already AI generate podcasts, like incredibly realistic podcasts,
Yes,
with AI generated voices. And I think as soon as you start doing that, people disengage because there's no human behind it, and they understand that it's AI generated, and so it loses its power and its connection. So I think that kind of thing isn't really going to go away. But that's my take.
that's a very good take, and I agree with you
I'm
entirely.
going to give a
Countertake?
counterpoint.
Oh, go,
Okay,
yes.
Counterpoint.
I love it.
Fight.
Controversial.
Fists down.
Humans are no good.
Oh,
what have we done lately?
What I love about this technology is it is really raising the floor in a lot of ways. Like, I'm glad that more people than ever can write code if they want to write code because, it's great. And people can bring their ideas to life. I think the same is true in the creative space. So yeah, IP issues aside, I think it's great. Like if you want to direct a movie, but you've got no resources and no like hard technical skills, like it really opens the door for you. I think that there's something nice about that.
I agree. I think that the flood of content that Dave mentioned is a good point. That's something that we'll see in our industry, in e-learning. And it's one where I feel like it will lose its impact, as we talk about in this podcast a lot. So I feel like providing things that do move the needle and do provide an impact is going to be an art form as opposed to being something that you can train a computer to do. But that's something that will come in time as well. All right, that's our conversation about AI for today. I think we covered off some good topics. I'm going to leave it there. And thank you for joining us on Impact Champions. Like and subscribe. We'll talk to you next time.